a slowdown in the growth in ad spending next year. Why?
Yeah, so first of all, at a global level, I mean, there are a lot of pressures on the global economy still. I realize the markets are kind of shrugging a lot of this off, but we're seeing a meaningful impact in some countries from concerns around diminishing investment, from trade barriers in other countries, as well as what's started to happen here, and just generally deceleration at the end of an economic cycle. So we see that in our local markets' expectations for advertising growth, no different than in a lot of local economies. The U.S. is a real meaningful exception, as is the U.K., but China, we're seeing meaningful slowdown in most other countries as well.
Mike, is this still, I guess, at least where digital ad spending is concerned, is this still largely a duopoly? Is it Facebook, Google, and everybody else, or are more potential advertisers looking to spread their spending around to different platforms?
Well, in the digital front, it's definitely about Facebook, Google, and Amazon. They're continuing to take huge share away from the other digital players. But, with the exception being, live sports, obviously the NFL is doing really, really well. The Olympics, NBC is doing really well with the Olympics coming up later in 2020. So it's going to be a real challenge because some of the major categories like automotive, retail, financial services, it's expected to be flat.
Now, Brian, digital ad spending is still growing. It's just not growing as fast as it was, say, 2016, 2017, right? So I wonder, how much does this really matter? Even when things slow down, won't the most powerful digital ad players still get the lion's share of business and try to use that to pivot into other businesses like maybe commerce on messaging connected to their platforms?
I think that's fair. And from an investor's perspective, there's always a concern about, well, what does that do to the margin profile? Or at least it should be a concern. It's safe to say that Google and Facebook are fine. They decelerate, not unlike I think investors are expecting. But I think at the end of the day, if the total market can only grow so much, when you think about terminal growth rates, you have to be conscious of the fact that these companies don't cause the global advertising economy to meaningfully outperform over the long term. So eventually, when you are the market, you grow at the level of the market.
Mike, how much does a potential deceleration have to do with companies taking a stance on political advertising? Spotify, the latest earlier this week.
I don't know if it has a significant impact. Obviously, the later you get into 2020, the clutter of political advertising makes it very, very difficult for most of the major categories to drive demand. So I think just the overall clutter in the marketplace, the availability, a lot of pricing challenges as well. And again, the three categories that are going to be in flux is automotive. They've got their own set of headwinds, wins. Obviously, financial services continue to be competitive. And then when you look at retail, everyone's still, most of the major retailers still have to fight Amazon, and Amazon continues to spend on one end and to continue to be a very viable advertising platform on the other end.
Brian, how big is the actual market, at least here in the U.S., for political advertising? What will that piece look like in 2020?
Right. So we actually think it is pretty impactful on the total growth rates. And we tend to talk about growth rates in terms of excluding political. But now if we include it, $10 billion is my estimate for 2020. And I feel like that's a conservative estimate. If we roll up all of our estimates on political in all media, not just TV and not just digital, but radio and outdoor, direct mail, directories even, I get to close to $10 billion. And again, that's up from about 8 in 2018. Fundraising is up 45% the last I looked for the first half of 2019 over the first half of 2017. So you can make an argument it'll actually be more robust than that. It's a pretty meaningful amount, and it'll be heavily skewed into a small number of geographies, so it'll be meaningful.